Hi, yo. It's me, Nicole Phoenix Star, and this is the Next Star podcast. Oh, I'm a little all over the shop, to be honest. And I am recording this quite a lot later than I usually do, kind of lastminute.com, getting it done because I have been on quite the mission and quite the adventure. Currently, I am recording this from Australia because we have moved here. Da, 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 da. Yes, you heard that right. This is all the eluding that I have been doing over the last few weeks about big things happening, and here I am living on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, which is where I originally moved from in 2011 to Bali. I have returned to the land of white sand beaches and sunshine, which hilariously is been quite rainy today. Anyways, so yeah, it's such a huge thing. I've actually rented a house with my daughter, Ruby. So I've just spent 6 weeks living with Harley, and now I have signed a lease for a year with Ruby, and Leo and I are living here with her. And yeah, it's a whole crazy scenario. So I didn't anticipate this, certainly didn't plan it. And generally what happens in my world is, I get these big visions and these strong pulls, and I follow the energy until clarity arrives. And interestingly, in June of this year, I started getting visions of me in my parents' kitchen a lot, which was kind of strange. I was kind of teaching my mum how to cook in a healthy way for my parents, because my father's generally the chef in the house, and my mother doesn't cook at all. And I don't know, I just, the vision was kind of like not just a, vacation pop-in kind of vibe. Anyway, I just was shutting it down and going, what's that all about? They going to get sick, and do I have to go and something? But it turned out to be something completely different. So, I had returned to Bali after COVID finished, signed a 5-year contract on a house lease, which was almost 2 years ago, and was, at that point, presuming I would stay there for quite some time, but always up for anything. Anyway, a couple of months ago, I had immigration request a interview with me because all the immigration and visa laws have been changing in Indonesia, and I have an international investment company in Indonesia, and I established that when I bought a house there in 2019. after I sold the house in 2021, I no longer was, had an investment in Indonesia. And so they just wanted to know when I was going to reinvest in Indonesia and if I was going to. Otherwise, I would need to change visas because there's a time limit of being on an international investor visa, which I was on. It was all very professional and very, very interesting. And it was really quite impressive, to be honest, that they were so organized and, recognizing who was on what timeline. And yeah, I was so impressed with the Indonesian government and how they were now facilitating visas and keeping people accountable and stuff like that. So I had to go away and consider my future, which is something I rarely do, and whether I was going to reinvest into Indonesia because kind of different ways of doing that had been floating around. But one thing that they did say was, very clearly they stated the parameters of different visas. And if you do have an investment in Indonesia, and run that as a business, you can't have a business in your home country or run an alternate business, like an online business. You just have to do one or the other. And that was kind of this is how you can operate in Indonesia and this is how you cannot. And so I was given very clear parameters on what that would look like. And, working online and creating different spiritual courses or coaching, writing a book on hormones, health and wellness, kind of guidance, and running retreats in, whatever country, or having a bricks and mortar business, or all of these different things, looking at, all the things that I've been working on and building and planning to do. And so I realized that I probably was not going to invest in Indonesia in the time frame I had left on my investment visa, because I had a year until I needed to invest. And I really was more online and whatnot. So I realized that I needed to change from an investor visa to the working online type visa. So that kind of really catapulted things. And then I looked a little deeper and deeper, and I realized that all the things I want to do and all the things I've been working on were I couldn't do them all. To live in Indonesia and to remain completely congruent with the visa rules. And I had to choose just a select few to be able to focus on. And that felt really limiting. And, which is such a contrary kind of reality, because I've always felt greatest level of freedom living in Indonesia. And now, due to all of the changes and the structures, that was shifting. And so what I did is I went into all the portals of potentiality of what it would look like for me to do all the things that I wanted to do. And I realized that for me to do that, I could do it in Australia. And that just blew my brains apart. So I have this process about going into the portals of potentiality, not as like working out whether to do it or not, but just what it feels like. What does it feel like to be there? You know, what would I need to feel whole? And, you know, I also went into other portals of potentiality of different countries and looked into current visa rules and conditions in different places, because that's how life rolls. And the more and more I kind of spent time in these different portals of potentiality, I got clearer and clearer. And, you know, I realized that one of my greatest values is having a motorbike. Like, it's one of my greatest values. So I started looking for bikes and found one. And I really love having a swimming pool. So I started looking at rentals, price range and whatnot. It was also very, very important for Leo to go to a school similar to the one that he's spent most of his life at. And I found one. That was in a different area. So I contacted them just all kind of on automatic and went, oh my God, we're doing this. We're really doing a deep, deep dive research. And things were looking quite good at this school that I really, really liked. But I started looking at the rentals around that area and it was just kind of crazy and it wasn't a fit and there felt like a contraction. So then I was having conversations with Ruby about it, who was, you know, and I said, you know, I was looking at the accommodation and the type of place I want to live in is a little bit out of my budget. And for Leo and I just to live somewhere where it feels kind of like a step back and then I found it. And so I said, you know, I did look at places that I would like. And I sent her a link and she's like, oh, wow, look at that. I said, yeah, like joking. It just came out of my mouth. Didn't even think about it. I said, yeah, well, you know, if you lived with us, I could afford it. She goes, oh, I'm not adverse to that. I was like, oh my God. Okay. And so we just kept following the energy. And I thought, yeah, well, that's pretty crazy because of the rental market and all of that. And I was having a conversation with the agent and she goes, well, why don't you just put in a rental application? And I was like, what the hell? Why would I do that? Anyway, I did. And she came back to me quite quickly and said, I can give you a verbal approval right now. I went, oh my God. So that kind of sent us into this huge, huge event. And I'm like, well, I could get the house that I really want with the pool. But I haven't even, like, I need to sell the 3 years of the contract of my house to be able to kind of facilitate all this. And I need to make sure that, like, I can get into this school and for it to be, like, reasonably close. And so everything kind of worked backwards than any regular linear, you know, ideal you would normally follow. And nothing was in place. Every part was moving. And I committed to the house and nothing else was lined up. But, you know, trust the process. Always trust the process. And I found the perfect bike. And I was about to contact him, and he dropped the price by $1,000. And then I contacted him. And it's immaculate condition. I bought it from him on the spot. Still hadn't sold my contract to my Bali house. Still hadn't got a spot in the school. But had the house. It was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. And as this happened, Harley moved in, and there was just a lot going on all the time. So much going on. And I just sat with it, and I was like, wow, I'm really excited to move to Australia. And I was having a conversation with Ruby. I said, I feel really excited, but there's this part of me that kind of freaks out because I couldn't find the words. And she's like, well, likely for you, it's just a stopover. And I went, and that just cleared the floodgates. And I went, oh my God, of course. If I don't like it in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, I just leave. As if I wouldn't anyway. I kind of forgot that bit. And she said, there's so many more of us here that can help with Leo. And if you need to go and do different things overseas, then it's just so much easier. And he's older. And I went, oh my God. And my parents had recently moved back to the Sunshine Coast as well. And, they're not getting any younger. And Dad's had a few health problems. And Mum had a big health situation early in the year, but she's fine now. And they're just kind of 20 minutes down the road, and everything just lined up as there are huge restrictions for me to be able to be free to work in the way I want to in Indonesia. And I can, with the new visa rules and the new conditions of each visa that is applicable to me, and wow, this is really happening. And eventually, after a few weeks of, chit-chatting to people about wanting to take my place in Bali for a month, and, fluffing around that happens on Facebook accommodation groups and all of this, I had a dear friend of mine connect me with some Italian guys that wanted to take over the contract. And they signed the contract in a completely different way that I wanted, that just worked out so much better for me and so incredibly great for them. And they're just so happy, and I'm happy with the way things have turned out, and that they've taken my beautiful home and are bringing it into a new era. And, that's what's been going on in the land of Nick Star. So, and there was 500 other things going on in the background that I won't bore you with. Well, it wouldn't be boring, but it'd end up a 5-hour episode because, I had a student of mine coming over for 2 months to Bali, and 1 month in, I was coming back to Australia, and she's like, oh, can I come to Australia too? And I'm like, yes, you can. And so it worked out so well. Everything just unfolded in the most unimaginable way. I hadn't even considered any of the way it landed. And I just kept showing up every day as I do, following the energy and just riding the wave and letting life live through me. And it has been such a wild, wild ride. And, not having things lined up and not having any certainty or stability or anything and just keeping on going. It all worked out so way beyond anything I could have ever anticipated. So that's my big news, my love. It's been really full on since we've landed. I've hit the ground running. I'd bought quite a lot of things online before I got here. Ruby moved in a couple of weeks before I arrived, set things up, bought a heap of stuff on Facebook Marketplace. Still have a few pieces to go. Been riding around on my bike, loving it. Yet to head to the beach. We've been flat out and pouring rain today, but we'll get there. Have swam in the pool and went to school today to do the school tour in the final admissions process. That's all done and dusted. And yeah, and it was so funny, like the Italians we'd signed a contract, but their barley company hadn't been finalized, and so it was a personal contract, and they landed in Bali at 1:55 p.m. At 1 p.m. I left my house in Ubud. I went to my friend's house in Sanur. My driver dropped us off, went to the airport, picked up the Italians, brought them to Sanur. We did the final agreement of the contract, signed. They transferred me the balance of the payment because they'd pay the deposit. They'd sent me the balance of the first payment. I didn't give them the keys, actually. The keys was waiting at the house with the staff. And we hugged. They hopped back in the car, went to Ubud. We hopped in a car and went to the airport. And I was like, can you come the day before just in case there's any flight? They're like, we've got a massive meeting in Italy and we can't. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure it'll work out. And so literally we had this like 3-hour window of them arriving and us kind of leaving, and we met in the middle, signed off everything and went in the opposite directions. So yeah, I'm really excited about everything here. I already have some in-person Australian peoples doing some work. All those things that I've been working on that I'm kind of getting ready to launch and whatnot are on their way, and life is incredible. I visited my parents yesterday in their new house and that was super sweet. Hung out yesterday for a minute and a few minutes today with my cousin, which was so fun. Leo's really happy. He was so sad leaving, but he'd learnt earlier on that you can have two really big emotions at the same time. You can actually feel very happy and very sad at the same time. So he learned about, holding the duality and recognize, because he was so confused. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sad about leaving Bali. And he's like, I'm so excited about moving to Australia. And he didn't know what to do with these conflicting emotions. So he had a big introduction to holding the duality where you can actually feel more than one emotion at the same time. And he is very good at doing that now. Like when we were leaving, he's like, it's so cool to feel so sad and so excited at the same time. And that's how I feel. And it doesn't make me sad. He's like, no, that's all right. He goes, it doesn't upset me. He goes, it's nice to feel sad, isn't it? When you just feel the emotion of, he goes, am I feeling sad? I said, you're just in the feels of leaving a big chapter in something so precious to you, going to something that you're really excited about. You know, there's so many definitions of the word sad, and that's just what worked for you now, so it's okay. And he goes, well, I'm feeling really sad, but not in a bad way. I'm feeling really excited in a really good way, and they're both being experienced at the same time. And none of it upsets me or feels weird in my body. And I'm like, you're holding the duality, my love. And he said, wow, it's so cool. I said, yeah, you're cool. So yes, here we are, settling into a little chapter of Australian life. And I am really, really, really happy about it. And I have things to do next year in Bali, so I'll be back for a little bit. And I have plans for a couple of overseas trips and massive online things and some in-person things as well. So I'm feeling extremely expansive, feeling like massive evolution tunnel. And it's been an extraordinary, glorious few months of really intensity. Lots of holding the duality, that's for sure. So, yeah, that's my news. I will be updating my website very soon. So keep an eye out for that. The old www.nickstar.com, NIKSTARR. Thank you so much for listening today. I am so grateful. Feel free to reach out anytime if you wish. You can connect with me on Messenger or DM me in Instagram. Send me an email, all the things. Thank you so much for witnessing my journey. I am so grateful. Mwah.